Every day, countless trucks arrived here, carrying freshly harvested sugarcane. The machines worked around the clock, and the sweet scent of molasses filled the air. The white sugar produced here once found its way into homes across China. For an entire generation, this wasn't just a factory. It was where people worked, lived, and spent some of the best years of their lives. But as the 21st century began, the machines fell silent. The workers left, and the factory slowly drifted into silence. No roaring engines. No rising smoke. Only the wind moving gently through the aging concrete and steel. Today, I'm taking you to ZiDitang, a former sugar factory in Guangzhou's Panyu district. Some call it an abandoned factory. Others believe it has been given a second life. So I wanted to see it for myself. The first thing I noticed wasn't abandonment. It was the silence, a silence unlike anywhere else. There were no noisy crowds, no music from souvenir shops. Only the sound of footsteps echoing through the empty buildings. It felt as though the factory had never fully woken up. Sunlight streamed through the broken roof, falling softly onto the weathered concrete. The cracks were never hidden or repaired. Time itself had been carefully preserved. Looking up, the massive steel framework still held the roof in place. Decades ago, it carried the weight of heavy machinery. Today, all it carries is the passage of time. Many visitors say it feels like stepping into the ruins of a movie set. But what fascinated me wasn't the abandoned buildings themselves. It was why they had been preserved in the first place. As I walked deeper inside, something completely unexpected caught my eye. What was once an industrial water reservoir had been transformed into a swimming pool. The water was still here, but its purpose had changed. It no longer served industry, it now belonged to everyday life. At that moment, I realized something. This place hadn't simply come to an end. It had found a different way to keep living. The workshops once filled with machinery are now used as parking spaces. Time has changed their purpose, but it hasn't erased their identity. You can still tell this place was built for industry. Near the entrance sits an old metal lathe. It will never run again or echo with the sound of metal against metal. Instead, it feels like an old retiree, quietly resting after a lifetime of hard work. Silently watching over the place it once called home. The faded numbers on the walls, the rusted steel beams, and the worn concrete floors, none of these were added as decorations. They are authentic traces of the factory's industrial past. Without a single explanation, they tell a story more powerful than any signboard ever could. Then a new era arrived. Young artists left their own colors on the walls. Factory numbers and modern graffiti now share the same wall. The past hasn't disappeared, and the present hasn't stopped moving forward. Two completely different eras meet in the same place. Further ahead stands the massive processing hall, where most of the sugar making once took place. The machinery is long gone, but the enormous scale of the building remains. Standing here, it's easy to imagine how overwhelming this place must have been when every machine was running. The only sound left is the wind. The elevated walkway connecting the buildings is now covered in rust. Workers once crossed it countless times every day. Pipes carried freshly pressed sugarcane juice overhead. The walkway still connects the buildings, but no longer connects production. Instead, it connects the past with the present. Between the cracks in the bricks, a small wild plant has taken root. No one waters it. No one looks after it. It simply grows quietly toward the sunlight. Plants never wonder whether a place is a ruin. They simply know that wherever life can grow, a new beginning is possible. Looking down, the old railway tracks are still clearly visible. Train after train once carried sugarcane through this very route. The tracks remain, but the trains are gone forever. Sometimes, what disappears isn't the buildings, it's the era they belong to. Beside the factory, a field of sunflowers blooms brightly beneath the sun. Their vibrant yellow stands in striking contrast to the gray concrete. They seem to remind every visitor of one simple truth. Even when a factory stops working, life always finds a way to move on. The wide roads once belonged to heavy transport trucks. They belonged to people out for a peaceful walk. The sweet smell of molasses has faded away, leaving only the wind drifting through the empty buildings. If you closed your eyes, you might even wonder if this place had ever been so busy at all. Wild grass has slowly reclaimed the entrance. Time didn't erase this place. Instead, it allowed nature to reclaim it little by little. But as I continued walking, I realized that ZiDitang's real transformation had only just begun. As I walked further, I finally understood why this place was never demolished. Some buildings never returned to their original purpose, but they found a new one instead. The factory that once produced sugar has been transformed into a museum of industrial history. It no longer produces goods. Instead, it preserves a chapter of the city's memory. Further ahead, the former office buildings have become cafes and creative boutiques. Some people chat. Some enjoy a cup of coffee. Others simply sit by the window, lost in thought. Decades ago, conversations here were about production schedules. But today, people talk about life instead. The buildings haven't changed. The times have. The old banyan tree still stands quietly in the courtyard. It witnessed the factory at its busiest, and later, the silence that followed its closure. Now, it welcomes a new generation of visitors. Sometimes, a single tree remembers more than any history book ever could. Just then, a group of children ran past, their laughter breaking the stillness of the old factory. At that moment, I realized that a building's true life has never been about concrete or steel. It's about the people who continue to gather here, and the laughter that fills the space once again. Beside the factory, the river continues to flow quietly. Years ago, cargo boats carrying sugarcane passed along these waters. The boats are gone, but the river never stopped flowing. Cities are much the same. They keep changing, but they never stop moving forward. Some buildings have kept their original framework while embracing a modern new look. Old concrete now stands beside contemporary steel. Two different eras meet within the same space. Neither replaces the other, they simply coexist. Along the roadside sit carefully restored machine tools. Nearby stands a retired aircraft. They feel like keepsakes left behind by time, quietly reminding every visitor of the past. History doesn't always belong behind museum walls. Sometimes, it's right beside us. Further ahead, the old office buildings remain much as they were decades ago. Simple. Solid. Built without unnecessary decoration. Yet they carry a quiet strength that belongs to the industrial age. Look up at the elevated walkway overhead. It once carried sugarcane juice between buildings, keeping production efficient and maintenance simple. Decades later, the pipes are empty, yet the structure still links the two buildings together. Just as the past continues to connect with the present. Along the way, I noticed several cleaners at work. They carefully swept every corner of the site. Most visitors probably never noticed them, but because of their quiet dedication, this old factory remains clean and welcoming. What truly keeps a place alive has never been its buildings. It's the people who care for it every single day. Even today, they continue to stand proudly. As if reminding us that truly well-built architecture can serve generations. As I reached the exit, I realized that the greatest change at ZiDitang wasn't the buildings themselves, it was that people had returned. And just beyond the factory, another story was waiting to be discovered. Just a few minutes' walk from the factory lies Shan ancient town. If ZiDitang tells the story of the industrial era, then Shan preserves the everyday life of Lingnan culture. Two completely different eras are separated by only a single road. Yet crossing it feels like traveling 100 years through time. The ancestral halls and ancient temples remain filled with worshippers. For the local community, these places are more than historic buildings. They are symbols of home, places people return to, no matter how far they've gone. This hall is dedicated to Bao Zheng, the respected statesman of the northern Song dynasty. A giant banyan tree stretches its branches over the square in front. Here, time seems to slow down. After a morning of exploring, it was finally time for the part one had been looking forward to most. Food. The tables were filled with traditional local treats. Almond cookies, chicken biscuits, walnut pastries, and bengsha, a beloved local specialty. Each bite carries memories of childhood for generations of locals. The owner was busy making fish skin dumplings by hand. Fresh fish was carefully pounded into delicate wrappers before being filled with seasoned meat. Every movement was smooth, almost like watching a performance. This craft has been passed down through generations. Freshly made fish skin dumplings. Fried milk. Crispy wontons, and chilled fish skin salad. Nothing was presented with fancy decoration, yet every dish tasted comforting and familiar. The greatest joy of travel isn't always about how many places you visit. Sometimes, it's simply discovering a meal you'll remember long after you've left. Throughout this journey, one question stayed with me. Why wasn't ZiDitang demolished? Perhaps the answer isn't about preserving old buildings. It's about preserving a shared memory of the city itself. The factory may have stopped producing sugar, but the sweetness it brought has never truly disappeared. Today, that sweetness lives on in children's laughter, conversations over coffee, and the warmth of everyday life in the ancient village. It even lives on in a simple meal that leaves you feeling completely satisfied. A factory can stop operating. But a river never stops flowing. And a city never stops growing. What deserves to be preserved isn't the ruins themselves. It's the people who once lived here. And the stories they left behind. I'm Maxville. Thank you for walking with me. Hope you have a good day. If you enjoy discovering the hidden stories behind cities, don't forget to join me on the next walk. See you next time.